to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today, we're going to have some fun reading some beautiful quo channelings, dealing in particular with the concept of the Son of God and how we maintain the attitude of joy in manifestation, among other things. Quo is a principle of higher entities made up of a variety of social memory complexes, Ra, Latwii, and Hatan, that are channeled by LL Research. Check out my other episodes for further background information. We begin with a channeling delivered on January 7th, 1990. The question this evening has to start with, how does one maintain the attitude and manifestation of the attitude of joy and of praise and of thanksgiving, sincerely and heartfelt, when one is undergoing assaults of pain and limitation, nausea, discomfort, general run-of-the-mill bad news? Then we will follow with other questions concerning perhaps, was Christ the only Son of God, and what does it mean to be a Son of God? Carla Channeling says, I am Quo. And with this group, thanking each in the circle for calling for the kind of information that we are able to offer an opinion upon. For it is a great service to us to teach, as the teach-learner learns always more than the student. You asked this evening firstly about the prickly business of mood balancing during difficult conditions. We are aware that it is this instrument's question, as this instrument is going into 2 hospitalizations and wishes with all its heart to create within those experiences a poem of praise and thanksgiving for the Creator, and not the nattering of complaint and whining. Firstly, we would remind all that they are in third density. The amount of will which it takes to balance pain and the counting of blessings is enormous, and if it is not balanced but merely suppressed, it does much more harm than good. It is well to ventilate any negative emotion while it is small, that it does not escalate into a crisis in the spiritual walk of a pilgrim. Breathe in, breathe out. This is the first blessing. You are alive. You are in this illusion, and you are learning. You earned this position, this incarnation. Carefully did you select that which shall come to you. Carefully did you estimate your limits and move catalysts to the very limits, for you wish once and for all to learn the lesson of unconditional self-forgiveness that opens the door to compassionate love. Therefore, the first thing that we should suggest is dwelling whenever possible upon the all-compassionate love and the immediate presence of the one infinite Creator. We realize it is difficult for the mind to work well when the physical vehicle demands a great deal of energy in pain control. But the words to give praise and thanksgiving are simple. Merely thank the Creator for your creation, for the safety in which you have lived to this day, experiencing and learning for opportunities of the moment and the moments to come. You have been created, and you are sustained, and all that is given you by your higher self, in sure knowledge that with that which this instrument would call grace, that which we would call the principle of unconditional love, can be made to be the natural and essential being of each, no matter what the condition. You as humankind must face the fact that you are mortal and given to weakness of the flesh. There are few who have not the aches, the pains, and the irritabilities. The basic secret of protecting the self from the self's own self-judgment is the practice of self-forgiveness. For Christ consciousness, the higher self, whatever you wish to call this principle of unconditional love, stands waiting for you to ask for help. May your heart be as soft as the earth in the springtime, that it may be amenable to plowing, and that seeds of love are planted in the ashes of pain and fertilized with meditation and caring to do better in a persistent way. When you wish to count your blessings, and you are not in a position to think clearly, you are still in a position to count the blessings of personalities close to you. You may give thanks that the Creator loves you personally, that you are as important to the mystery as the mystery is to your mystery-clad being, not your variousness, not your free will, but that of you which is in the Creator, and that of the Creator which is in you. Kindness to the self is helpful. We find also that for some the using of breath is very helpful, for when one uses one's breath, one is using one's vital energy. Thus the reading to the self of material designed to increase one's awareness of thanksgiving is recommended. Even repetitious reading of inspiring words is helpful, for sometimes those of humankind are resistant to feeling better about themselves, to accepting their limitations, and to continuing to offer the praise and the thanksgiving that is rightfully the one infinite Creator's, who offered each of you and each of us a magnificent opportunity, the opportunity to grow, to be, to perceive, and to act. Always have you control of some degree over the behavior which you must express. This instrument is telling us that we should be short, as there is more than one question. We believe that an instrument such as this one, who is in pain, may, through the help of medication, which is causing mere sleep, slide into thanksgiving for all those souls that care about the entity, for the Creator's love of the entity, for the gift of faith to bear that which cannot be borne and to endure the unendurable. We credit each pilgrim with persistence. Persistence, more than any one trait, though it lacks somewhat in a sense of humor, is the key to spiritual growth. You cannot pick up items on the spiritual shelf and gaze at them and try them and put them back unless you have learned from them and applied those learnings in the life. Therefore, we suggest the very simple giving of thanks. Thanks for creation, for preservation, and for all those people and things that are blessings to you. In any circumstance, there are many blessings, not the least of which is the fact that many environments which an entity knows not that it touches moves into prayer as it cares and shares that caring with the metaphysical instrument of unconditional love, and the request that the will of the one Creator be perceived, and the entity given the strength to act what is perceived. You must see yourselves as heroes. You are mythical characters. You are not mundane. That is the illusion. The pain that you feel is within the illusion. Far worse is it to feel the spiritual pain of rejection, low self-worth, frustration, and anger. These things cannot be avoided, for you are of humankind, but in the controlled situation of recovery from serious illness, it is good to attempt to pray without ceasing, giving thanks for all that you can think of, for those who love you, for the Creator which nurtures you, for the skill of those healers which work with you. Repetition is a good and useful tool for the learning of a habit, and that is what a positive attitude is. It is a habit. You may complain, or you may count your blessings. It is difficult to do both in the same breath. To increase the energy which is available for praise and thanksgiving, that is, to increase the vital energy, the use of the breath is recommended either through chanting, singing, praying out loud, or reading from inspirational works to the self. Again, repetition is no bad thing. If something is important to you as you read, savor it and bless it with your recognition of its personal truth for you. Jim asks, what does it mean to be a son of God? And how do we manifest that? Is it possible to in our lives? Was Jesus the only Son of God? I am quo. The phenomenon known to you as Jesus is a principle of the Logos, or love, that is moved through the densities as any other entity, but was created slightly differently than those of you who swim beneath the sea of illusion. This entity who wished to live a life that was a poem to the Creator, and again, on planet after planet, this entity comes into incarnation with the special character of partial remembrance. In other words, this entity contains more of the Logos, or love, than free will, whereas each of you contain the bonding of love and free will, against which you must challenge yourself to find a unity of being. This entity was a good teacher of the message of the law of one. Again and again, the message is misunderstood. Again and again, the Creator sends forth that special part of itself, which retains the consciousness of unconditional love rather than having it disappear beneath the veil. This entity has helped many many civilizations. Each of you is equally son or daughter, heir or heiress, Christ of God, but each of you are deeply enmeshed in a negatively oriented, mundane world. You do not have the ability which this special entity had to perceive and do the Creator's will and joy, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what the cost. However, each of you is the brother or sister to the Christ principle. The Christ principle resides within each of you. You are Christ, but you are separated from the knowledge of that portion of yourself, that you may feel iniquitous, guilty, angry, frustrated, and disharmonious, and thereby offer to yourself the catalyst which is needed for growth and polarization in the choices that you make to serve others or to serve the self. Shall you one day be a Christ? There is only one Christ that is part of the Creator or the Logos that has been given the dispensation not to forget in third density. This does not mean that you are lesser. It means you struggle against more difficult circumstances, for you struggle in a life full of faith instead of knowledge. To the one known as Jesus, there was little mystery in the Creator, in itself, and in humankind. To the rest of creation, there remain grave questions to be answered, a truth for which to be sought, although the truth shall not be forthcoming within this density. There is the instinctive hunger to move closer and closer to that principle of consciousness which is freely given, unconditionally given, love. You labor against an immense handicap. Do not be discouraged. In the words of this particular entity, when mistakes are made, they are not counted. It is merely an opportunity to realign the life pattern so that the lesson may once again come before the entity. There is no judgment, save the judgment of the self by the self. Consequently, we suggest that each spend time forgiving the self and praying for those who are not seemingly helpful to you, for so would the Christ consciousness do. So is the I am of love. Each of you has an I am deeply buried in the resources and contents of the deep mind. It is overlaid with a stratum after stratum of bias, experience, and reaction. As always, we recommend the faithful daily meditation or some form of prayer, that one may spend time aware that one is on holy ground. There is no ground that is not holy. But when one is moving very quickly through the mundane routine of the day, one is prone to forget one's relationship with the Infinite One. Call yourself prodigal sons or daughters, for you have squandered your inheritance. As a planet, damage has been done that rests upon the head of each. May each be aware of each and pray that the situation be ameliorated, and if possible, may each entity volunteer to make things better for those who have nothing. Yes, my friends, there is only one Christ, but it is a consciousness, a principle that can incarnate and incarnate again and incarnate again. When it incarnates, its only difference is that it does not forget that which all those upon your sphere do forget: the glory, the wonder, the beauty, the peace, the laughter, the love, and the light of the one infinite Creator. It is not impossible for you to move along the path that the Christ consciousness has shown you. For you too are the sons and daughters of the Infinite One, and as you meditate and slowly become more and more conversant with the deep self which is worthy, limitless, and eternal, you may find yourself humbly pleased that you are able to be a servant of the principle of love. May we ask if there's another query at this time? Jim asks, who are you as Quo as you speak to us? I am Quo. I am two social memory complexes, the one you know of as Ra and the one you know of as Latui. We have combined because this instrument constantly asks for the highest and best contact it may stably carry. The energies of the one known as Ra, which is a social memory complex of 6 density, is an energy band narrow enough that it requires the locking in and therefore the unconscious state of the mind of the channel. The entities of Ra were appalled to see the toll it took upon this instrument to bring forth that which it did channel. It was not expected there would be so much interest from what this instrument calls the loyal opposition. When our energies are stepped down to those of Latui, an energy this instrument feels more comfortable with, we are able to offer concepts that are to some degree more precise and may we say perhaps more interesting to the advanced student of metaphysics than that which is called with Latouille would be the self, for Latouille is of fifth density, the density of wisdom, and as you can feel, our vibrations are the vibrations not only of unconditional wisdom, but compassion as well. Thus, we are a composite, and as this instrument has often suspected, our name is a pun, a quibble, not a joke, but merely an identification which was clear. We are the I Am, and you too are the I Am, and all that is in creation is the I Am. We choose a language this instrument knew and used the word meaning who or which. It was designed to make the instrument ponder this very point, and we are delighted in the results so far, for we of Latouille have been able, with the help of our teachers, those of Ra, to offer information in a way which is clearer and more compassionate, perhaps, than we of Latouille in and of our own social memory complex could accomplish. We find that our senses of humor are not at all the same, and so we have attempted to give up our sense of humor, that the highest sense of humor or wisdom informed by compassion may do its subtle work in these meditations. Question: can you talk about what it means to accept your limitations? I am Quo. The acceptance of limitations is both simple and excruciatingly difficult. To accept a limitation is to fight, not against it, and it is humankind's nature to fight, to see any limitation or lack of freedom as a fault, and to move body and soul and mind and spirit in will and faith that the condition experienced, which may be difficult at the present moment, by the activities of good attitude, proper care of the body, and proper discipline of the mind and personality, may become more and more able to be themselves. When one is doing that which one does out of a sense of duty, one is not accepting one's limitations, for the limitations of which we would speak are not only those physical limitations which may occur, but also mental, emotional, and spiritual limitations, which are just as valid, though unseen, to accept the self as it is to accept the limitation. Now, this instrument, for instance, is a good example of those who are unable to accept limitation. This is a human characteristic and is designed in direct opposition to the spiritual principle of surrender of the self. However, this determination and will was given to each seeking entity to use in complete free will, and so, if the limitations are not respected and are pushed against, this is no mistake, nor is it an error. It simply increases the distractions and discomforts of the limitations against which one is fighting. If one were to accept all of one's limitations, one would never change. What we truly mean by accepting limitation is accepting whatever condition one finds oneself in. Certainly, it is well to help the self insofar as the self may be helped. I am Quo, and I shall continue. The acceptance of limitations is a very personal, metaphysical question. If one accepts limitations that are unacceptable to the personality, one is not accepting limitations, but rather becoming dutiful, and duty is a negative emotion. So we suggest to each that one do what one can to improve one's condition with joy, and to meet that which one cannot meet with joy, with a sense of peace and acceptance. Each entity was born without this or that gift, and with other gifts. Each entity is unique. Each entity has unique limitations. Therefore, we suggest to the one who wishes to accept one's limitations that in any circumstance one offer praise and thanksgiving for one's being, one's preservation, and one's son or daughtership in relation to the one infinite creator. May we answer your query further, my sister? Not at this time, thank you. I am Quo. Pardon us for taking the time, as you would say, to luxuriate in what seems to us a warm and frothy waterfall of each entity's love of the Creator and of each other. We are aware that within this group there is not the strength of the group which Ra was able to use. This identity, Quo, is able to use the level of this group in a stable and safe manner. We rest here with you in quietness and peace and comfort and immunity, for you are light to us, beautiful, dramatic, and at the very heart of the adventure of consciousness. Now is the time for choice, to serve the Creator by serving others, or to serve the self, and so serve the Creator within. We ask each to be persistent with the daily routine of morning offering. We realize that anywhere 2 or 3, as it is said in your holy works, are gathered together, unconditional love is within the group as a member, an actual principle or being of consciousness. Thus the group meditation, the group focus upon the truth and love and peace, creates a very strengthening resource for each as it moves from the group into other environments which are not controlled, which are not safe, which are puzzling and risky. May you pray for such risks and such chances to utilize that which you have learned to move closer and closer to the polarity of the unconditional love that is the core of your imperishable being. Moving to a channeling on November 10th, 2007. The question tonight is conspicuously absent in the philosophy of the raw contact is any member of the surrender of the conscious self to a guidance, intelligence, or will greater than its own, be it the higher self, love and light, or the Creator. Where is there room for God's grace and surrender in Ra's philosophy? If surrender is suggested in Ra's philosophy, to what does it entity surrender? Carla channeling says, we are known to you as those of the principle of quo. As always, we would preface our remarks by requesting that each who listens to or reads these words reserves the right of discrimination as you listen or read, in order that you may choose that which our thoughts will pursue and use which you shall lay aside. Not all of our thoughts shall be equally appropriate for you, and we would ask that rather than taking our thoughts as a whole and attempting to work with them all, you should choose those that resonate to you personally. If you shall do this, we will be most grateful, for it clears the way for us to know that we are not infringing upon your free will. The question before us has to do with the place of surrender or grace in the system of philosophy or thinking that we have offered through this channel previously. Firstly, we shall remark that the philosophy or system of thinking, which is sometimes known as the law of one or the confederation philosophy, posits a singular unitary consciousness in which all parts are interactive and all things are one. If all things are one, to what shall any soul surrender? This is why there is no mention of such surrender within our thoughts, which we share with you. Now let us look at the way of the world, as we might call the world, in which it would seem that there is a self that is error-prone, and that is a separate creator that is perfect, which is imperfection, is contrasted and separate from perfection. The human self of third density is set apart from the creator of that third density soul. There are two basic ways in which those of your culture choose to make the demarcation between the human and the divine. The first is that of the Christian, the Jewish, and Islamic religions or philosophical systems, if you will, in which there is required of the sinner a repentance and a surrender of the human self in order to worship, adore, and be redeemed by the creatorship of the Messiah or the God named Allah, whose prophet is Muhammad. This system of demarcation of human and divine takes its flavor from the male energy of the God name involved in all three religious systems. The forerunners to these religions were systems of myth and magic in which there were sacrifices of animals, and in some cases humans, so that the blood might ascend to the heavens and please the perfect creator, which then would smile upon the sinning and erroneous human. The human then was redeemed to divinity through the sacrifice of an innocent, be it the animal or the virgin human. In your Holy Bible, there is the figure of Abraham being ordered by the Creator to sacrifice his son Isaac. Not questioning the Creator in any way, Abraham builds a fire, sets the wood, sets the tinder ready to light the fire, then binds his son to the fire to make the human sacrifice as requested by the Creator. At the last instance, a ram is found caught in a thicket. Isaac is set free and the ram takes the son's place. In the New Testament, the son is not so lucky. There is no ram in Jerusalem, and Jesus the Christ is crucified upon Golgotha. In both testaments, the figure is the same, one innocent to die in order to redeem all of the sinful humanity. Over against this type of demarcation between human and divine, one may gaze at the systems of Buddhism and Hinduism, in which the erroneous human is set over against emptiness, nothingness, release, rest, and freedom from suffering. In this figure, each entity becomes the Christ, sacrificing its selfhood entirely in order to become free of suffering and thereby free of the wheel of karma and endless incarnations. What these two systems have in common is a careful split betwixt humanity and divinity, or the profane and the sacred. Within the law of one, no such demarcation exists. Rather, it is posited that each entity within third density has the one infinite creator at the heart of every fiber of its being. The mystery of the law of one is that implicit within the egg of humanity is the full-grown creature of Godhead, and implicit within the Creator is that sending forth of those seeds of self into illusion in order to gather information concerning its own identity. This does not mean that the concepts of surrender and grace have no relevance to the law of one, but rather that the process of spiritual evolution is seen in this model of seeking the truth to be a journey inward. There is no reaching outside of self, but rather the intention to seek the heart of self, which is the one infinite creator. This is a model which your culture cannot support and which consensus reality itself finds it difficult to understand. Your culture cannot see the infinite value of the self or assume that perfection lies within the self, which is always seen as prone to error and foolish and flawed in many ways. Consensus reality has no entrance into a system of thought which posits the perfection of humanity, for it is quite obvious when one gazes upon oneself or another being that neither oneself nor another being either expresses perfection or contains perfection in some latent state. Being unconscious of the illusory nature of third density, the culture simply has no way to absorb or understand a system in which it is posited that all that is, including perfection, exists within the self. We have spoken many times about this inward journey. We have spoken about the surface of life that is consensus reality, which rather than being earth has more of the quality of the ocean, liquid, penetrable, deep, and capable of being entered by the diver who dives deep, perhaps to gather pearls from the ocean's floor and to bring up those precious pearls to store away in the treasure house. Our consciousness have a regular and layered nature. The surface of the ocean of consciousness is that infinitesimal part of yourself that is fully invested in consensus reality. You are as one who floats upon the surface as long as you are content to remain uncurious as to what lies beneath the surface of self. Much of your psychology is content to remain largely upon the surface of self and to work with the structure of the personality. We have called the personality shell to indicate that it is, in a way, a husk which protects the fruit that lies so sweetly within. As long as you feel that you are your personality and are limited by your traits, gifts, and limitations of personality, then you shall float upon the ocean of consciousness, never penetrating below the surface disturbances of waves, moved forever by the moon's attraction and washed with the tides that ebb and flow with all the influences on the surface personality. It is our suggestion that you are capable of diving more deeply within the folds of your personality and penetrating, at last, into deeper waters which are, although illusory, far less distorted in their ability to express the truth of the oneness of all creation and the beauty, the truth, and the creatorship within each soul. We can use words like Christ consciousness or cosmic consciousness to help the seeker begin to penetrate the idea that there is an internalized Christhood within each cell of your body and within each iota of your emotions, your mentality, and your spirit. Thusly, we see a journey that slowly develops for each seeker. The beginning of the journey is the awareness that there is more to the illusion than meets the eye. This awareness arouses the seeker and creates a hunger and a thirst for the truth that is missing from consensus reality. There is a flatness perceived to consensus reality. Birth, growth, adulthood, working, marriage, children, friends, getting older, failing in health, and then dying are the signposts of the journey across the flat, even if turbulent, sea of consensus reality. However, the seeker becomes aware that this model of life is not accurate, or not fully accurate, once the seeker has awakened to the knowledge that there is infinitely more than this life. And these details of life, the seeker can no longer go back to sleep. Once awake, the journey has begun. There are various ways in which the seeker grows as he seeks ever more deeply for the truth about himself. If the seeker uses the settled religions which we mentioned earlier in an attempt to penetrate the truth of himself and his relation to the Creator, he is forever dependent upon another. If the seeker is aware that he is seeking his deepest self, then there is no other. There is only a growing desire to lay aside each mask, each husk, and each trait of personality that veils from him the deepest truth of his nature. Yet this is not a mechanical process. There is no stairway to heaven, as the song phrases it. There is only the gentle and continuous intention to allow the dropping away of all those things that keep the awareness from beholding the presence of the one infinite Creator. And this is where surrender and grace re-enter this law of one, for the surrender is to the deeper self, and in the surrender to the deeper truth of the self, the shallower identifications of self with personality traits, accidents of birth, race, religion, and so forth melt away. All distinctions blur because the presence of the Creator within. It is as though the seeker orbits the self, closer and closer, until finally it is drawn into the heart of self by a kind of spiritual gravity, and suddenly there bursts forth an awareness, a satori, a realization, an epiphany, and in that moment the self is known to the self, and that self is love. Blessed are those moments of grace when all masks fall away and the naked self stands fearless, beholding its own nature, which is sacred and divine. We do not object at all to the seeker's use of otherness. For instance, this instrument works with mystical Christianity and patterns her life after the example of the one known as Jesus the Christ, whom she calls her beloved, whom she follows, for whom she would die, and for whom she lives. She is aware of the relative impurity of a model which contains the self and another self, yet to contain her devotion and channel it in a productive and positive way, she uses the conventions to which she was born in consensus reality as a conscious being. It is a way to avoid paradox, for the conscious mind, with its rational and logical nature, has a deep distrust and dislike of paradox, and it is certainly paradoxical to say both that the surface self is real and that the deepest and most unitary expression of self is real, yet that is what we say, knowing that it is a paradox and a mystery. There are those among your mystical groups as well as individuals who do not function as part of a group, who abnegate words and choose the way of silence. Over a period of time, the habit of silence decreases the difficulty of absorbing the outrage of paradox, and such silent souls smile at the sophistry of words, which separate, and logic, which delineates and divides to no good purpose, spiritually speaking. Yet we would not encourage you to become recluses. We would encourage you to embrace paradox and mystery. We would encourage you to continue your journey upon the surface of life, knowing that it too is perfect in its way, even with all the masks, all the confusions, and all the misunderstandings and limitations of dealing with each other and with circumstances which occur in everyday life. For third density was not designed to be a quiet and steady dive to the center of self. It was designed to be turbulent, as the shaker that breaks rocks into pieces, or large pieces of ceramic into small pieces of ceramic, polishing them and shaping them by friction and impact. To come at the action intended in third density another way, we could use the figure of the fiery furnace which tempers and strengthens the brittle, callow young soul so that it becomes an instrument of great flexibility and strength. Your world is intended as a refinery of souls. That catalyst that comes to the surface self is seen by us as a good thing, a useful and appropriate thing, whether it feels comfortable or vastly uncomfortable. Indeed, it is the movement of the self within periods or situations of discomfort which are especially helpful in achieving maturity and a more polished or tempered realization of the nature of the self and the Creator. Both your physical body and your metaphysical body or your energy body are designed to take advantage of and make use of this catalytic effect of the day-by-day occurrences of life. A great deal of the catalyst of life comes from the relationships which you have, first with yourself and then with other people, and as the spirit grows in maturity, it becomes more able to see through the illusion of suffering. It becomes more able to penetrate the devices and desires of its own surface being, to see the patterns of learning that lie within those surface movements of the emotions and the reactions of the mind and the body. It does not become more in control of what occurs within life. Rather, it becomes unafraid of not being in control, and this is grace. When all about one is pressured and stressful, and yet there is that within the heart that remembers the true nature of the self, then that spirit is in a state of grace and may maximize its learning and its service within third density. What is being refined in the refinery of souls that is earth? What is this soul within third density? A synonym for soul might be heart, and we have often suggested to you that you are on a journey into your own open heart. Christ is waiting for you within your heart. As you allow the surface of self to fall away, you become empty enough to fall in love with yourself. You begin to see that all these details of self, wretched though they may be in some cases and glorious in others, fall away to nothingness before the self's desire to seek the presence of the one infinite creator. And so the self within incarnation becomes merry and lighthearted, whether in sunshine or in rain, whether in good times or evil. For the self remembers that it is on a journey whose destination is sure, and thusly, through all the changes and chances of mortal life, that seeking soul may be confident and quiet within, full of faith, and knowing that all is well, and this too is grace. There is a great power in words. Words can stir up the emotions. Within the power of those who wish to inspire others, there is the ability to manipulate feelings and emotions and to whip up passion so that an ecstasy of hysteria is achieved in which there seems to be a breakthrough into the love of Christ. However you wish to say that condition of perfect love, and that feels very good, yet that which is whipped up dies down. We would rather not proceed with words that inspire in order to whip up passion and to change rejoicing into hysterical expression of love for the Creator. Rather, we ask you to use every faculty of your being, your intellect, your will, your body, your emotions, and every fiber of your being to seek to remember who you are. There are so many ways to work on that question, for all of nature is one with you. And all of nature is full of that information which harmonizes with your desires and sets up patterns of attraction and coincidence. And all of spirit is one with you as well. All that is unseen and not of nature, but all of spirit conspires to speak with you in silence, singing into your life those silent melodies of truth and beauty. There is a wind that blows through you, changeable and sacred. And in every season and mood of your life, it brings new life, new light, new power, new information, new expressions of that which is always the same. Love, love, love. We encourage your explorations, however you wish to seek the Creator. We encourage you to follow those preferences and those biases. We simply offer to you our humble opinion of the deeper truth of the process that is occurring within third density. Third density is set up as a system after system of opposites. Male and female, light and dark are certainly chief among them. Yet male and female combine to make third density in the sense that it is the male principle and the female principle attracting each other, which create this illusion that you call third density. It is the very fabric and stuff of third density. And indeed, the meat which is chewed in third density is that meat of choice, light or dark, radiant or magnetic, service to others or service to self. There are two paths, both valid and quite opposite in their energy, both pointed towards an eventual unity, yet choosing two completely different paths towards that inevitable awareness of utter unity. In claiming the law of one, we move ahead to that point in what you would call your future, where the positive and negative paths have once again converged and become one for all time, until the creation itself moves from time to the timeless and enters the womb of yet another creation as the heartbeat of the Creator throbs once more and another creation begins. Your journey homeward. How shall you journey? That is the question of third density. Shall you journey in the light, seeking ever to become more of service, more loving, more giving, more aware of the love within each moment? Or shall you enjoy the dark path, where the self is seen immediately as the Creator and all other selves are seen as those who would worship the Creator in you? Thus the dark path is one where each who follows it attempts to coerce, manipulate, or otherwise use all other selves to tell them what to do and to make sure they are useful to the self or moved out of the way of self. This also is a valid path, yet it is a dark path and a bloody path. There are those who prefer it. We are not those. We are those of the radiant path, so we ask you to remember rather than dismember yourself. We ask you to collect all of your pieces of yourself and remember yourself, to gather all of your members together. We ask that you love your imperfections, gather them to your bosom, honor them, and bring them into your heart. And then we suggest that you remain in the tabernacle within, even as you move upwards into the surface of life once again and experience the turbulence of the surface tides of life. there is to our mind that constant flow of moving from the depths of the truth to the surface expression of the truth, which in many cases are highly colored, but always carry those seeds of the truth with lies so deeply within. All is one, and all is love. This instrument is suggesting that we cease speaking upon this particular topic so that we may use the remaining energy of this group and this instrument to inquire as to whether there is a desire to follow up on this query. We are those of Quo, and we are aware that we have exhausted the questions that this group has this evening. And so we would thank you once again, our dear friends, for the privilege of sharing in your meditation and being a part of this session of working. Your circle of seeking is beautiful to behold, and your blended auras sing of the love and the light of which we have been speaking this evening. Thank you for allowing us to share in the love and affection that you have for each other and for the one infinite Creator. It is a blessing to be part of your circle. We leave this instrument and this group in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We are known to you as the principle of Quo. Adonai. Adonai. These two channelings I found to be beautiful, and one of the very few times I've read the Quo channelings and got emotional there at the end. I felt like Quo was with me as I was reading these words. I could feel what they were talking about. Beginning with the first channeling, we all struggle when we're in periods of pain and discomfort to find joy in manifestation, to remind ourselves of the joy of creation. And it's a good reminder. It's a good thing to think about and ponder upon, because we all have to go through it. When we have pains and different things that are going on, maintaining that attitude of joy is very important, and they recommend breath as one way to do that. The second question that they asked is a beautiful question, and it's an important one, and I found some of what they said to be very interesting. There's some things that Quo hadn't mentioned before in the past. The idea that Jesus the Christ had the veil lifted just slightly more than the rest of us and could see the Creator within much more than the rest of us. And his expression of unconditional love was much easier because this veil is lifted, and this happens on all planets, as they explained. I found that fascinating. We all have the Christ within. We are all the Creator, but historically, if you're going to say historically, then Yeshua, who experienced this lifting of the veil, was able to express this unconditional love in a certain way that was powerful and wonderful. The second channeling I'm just blown away by, because it really talks about something very unique. Edgar Cayce and many other very spiritual people will say it's a giving in, letting go, letting the higher power take over. It's this thing that we do when we are in a spiritual moment, letting the Creator take over. But they're saying that the Creator is within you, that there is no letting the Creator take over, because you are the Creator. And I just love the analogies and metaphors that they used, and understanding the self, and it's this personality shell that we have. And third density is complicated, and the crazy stuff that happens to us is good, because it reveals portions of ourselves and our personality. And as we release these portions of our personality, we come closer to the inner core of the Creator within us. I would love to know your favorite portions of these channelings and to get your thoughts on them. You are beautiful and wonderful, and I am sending love and light to everyone that's listening. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.